Hey there, friends. Merry Christmas from the Paulides household. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great day with friends and family. And that's Huck wishing you a Merry Christmas too, huh, Huck? Yeah. She just had a bath the other day. She's all fluffy and white and pretty. Yeah, oh yeah, she's a good girl. Was Santa nice to you today, huh? Yeah. I think he was, yeah. You had all kinds of goodies today, huh? You're a good girl. You're a good girl. That noise you heard coming down the chimney, that was Santa last night. You didn't know that, did you? Oh yeah. We'll talk more about that later. She's still confused. What was that sound I heard last night in the middle of the night, Dad? Oh yeah. All right. Every Christmas, I do something special for you guys and gals. Today's no different. I'll start off a little personal. So, one thing I've had for a long time is like this porcelain Santa. My aunt gave it to me when I was about 20 years old. And I always kept it. And my aunt was she was my dad's sister, older sister. We were tight. Really good lady. Married to a big Italian guy, Ray. And their family was always special to us. But the most special memento is I lost my mom when she was 53. She had cancer. And while she had cancer, first of all, she was real good knitting, needlepoint, sewing. She was outstanding. And since she couldn't move around a lot, she kept working on this little elf. This is it. She made that. And I have it. Yes, it goes on my tree every year. And I know my mom made it. Super important to me. And we all have those important things. And I think those mementos are important as you go through life. But Christmas, holidays mean different things to different people. When I was younger, we always got together with my aunt and uncle, Ray and Ruth, and their family. And then other times, other family members would join us. But we always switched off. Thanksgiving one year would be at one relative's house, the next year would be at our house. And we flipped back and forth, Christmas, Thanksgiving. And we were a tight group. My dad and me and my uncle and his boys would always find a way to go fishing together. And we had some wild escapades. Sometimes we went steelhead fishing, sometimes salmon, sometimes just trout in the summer. But it kind of kept that family bond together. And you got to see people under different circumstances and different locations. And it was just a hoot. Just a hoot growing up. I was lucky to have that. Now, just the other day, I was talking to a very close friend of mine. And I was telling her about a very strange thing that happened to me at the Montana Vortex. Now today, we're going to talk about miracles. That's going to be the brunt of it. But I wouldn't exactly call this a miracle. But I was over at the Vortex during the summer, and it was about 8-9 months after Ben passed away. And I was pretty bummed out. I wasn't really an upbeat person. And I'd go over there, and there's a certain area of the Vortex where I can sit and meditate, and it worked for me. I could talk to Ben in my way. And at the Vortex at the time, there was a lady that was renting space from the owners, and she was a psychic. That's how she billed herself, and Joe and Tammy always said, yeah, Dave, she's good. I never really went to her. But I always talked to her. Super nice lady. she asked me about myself all the time. One thing I never talked about was fun conversations that Ben and I would have. How I would needle him and he would needle me. And well, Ben's grandpa was bald. And Ben knew when he was going to get older, he was going to be bald. Because he had a little thinning hair even when he was in his mid-20s. And Ben would always, in a friendly way, give me crap about my hair. Because I had a full head of hair. Oh, your dad, that hair's looking really good today. Ha ha ha. It made me laugh. So, one of these days I was at the Vortex. And again, I don't talk about this to anybody. You guys are the first ones hearing about this on a public scale. I came out after meditating. And the Vortex was closing. And the psychic was leaving. And we just started to walk out together. She was ahead of me a little bit. And as we start to walk through the gift shop, she turns around and looks at me and goes, "Hey, Ben says, nice hair." What? I said, what? Ben said, he laughed and said, nice hair. Okay, friends. There's no way anybody knew that. No, I hadn't told anybody. I almost fell over. I couldn't believe it. But you know what? It gave me some solace. Kind of like I knew he was there. Was that a miracle? Would you define that as a miracle? It came at the right time for me. It lifted me. I don't know. I didn't ask for a reading. She just volunteered it. But since we're talking about miracles, and believe me, it did come at the right time for me. Lifted me more than anybody knew. What is a miracle? A miracle is an extraordinary event manifesting in a divine intervention in human affairs. That's a definition number one. Number two is it's an effect of extraordinary event in the physical world that surpassed all known human or natural powers and is ascribed to a supernatural cause. Third one, it's an unusual and mysterious event that is thought to have been caused by a god because it does not follow the visual laws of nature, the usual laws of nature. Okay. During my life, I've seen a lot of things. I had a friend of mine whose son shot himself. Put a gun, shot himself in the chest. Right? 10x. With a .357, a big gun. His brother was nearby, heard the shot, took him to the hospital. This buddy of mine called me and said, "Dave, trauma surgeons are on him right now." And they said, "It's a miracle. His heart's beating right now." What happened? The bullet missed every artery by 1/4 of an inch. Unbelievable. Miracle that he survived? You could make that shot 100 times and never have that happen again. He's still alive. I talk to him all the time. He's a great guy. So, the question. Remember the stories that I presented where an individual went missing and was later found by an unrelated person who had a dream directing them to that person's body? Do you remember those stories? Is that a miracle? Who directed them? Why? Half the time they didn't even know somebody was missing. They just knew that they had to go find this person. There's a lot of those stories, folks. Miracles happen every day. You never really hear of them. Unless the story makes headlines. And sometimes it's the story behind the story that's the miracle. I'm sure most of you have heard about the story I'm about to tell you. But I did a bunch of research on this, and there was so much behind it that I knew one day I was going to tell you. The incident happened August 5th, 2010 at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And it happened at the Atacama Desert in Chile, at the San Jose mine. Here's Chile. Here's Santiago. Pacific Ocean. Argentina, right here. Atacama Desert. I've talked to you about that before. There's a lot of strange things out there. Well, the mine was a gold and copper mine first opened in 1889. Over the years, it had several accidents that resulted in fatalities. The latest before this one was in 2007, where there was an explosion that killed 3 miners. There were a lot of rumors that safety precautions weren't up to speed. The government wasn't controlling what was happening at the mine enough. A lot of rumors. But the mine was owned and operated by the San Esteban Primera Mining Company. And the employees came from across Chile and Bolivia. And on any given day, they had between 30 and 50 people in the mine. The location is about 50 miles northwest of Copiapó and about 500 miles north of Santiago. Now, the morning of August 5th, 2010, the miners reported that there were some unusual occurrences in the mine that made them nervous. Some rock falls, some shaking, some things that didn't feel right. And they told the management, and they said, oh, we'll look into it. But as was normal, nothing was done. On that day, there were 33 miners working at a depth of 2,625 feet. The mine was unusual. You started up at ground level, and the mine was in a circular spiral down into the ground. The mine was working under the approval of the Chilean National Geology and Mining Service. They were the ones that approved the mine, supervised it, made sure it was legal. Well, at about 2 p.m. that afternoon, the mine had a huge explosion and collapse, isolating the 33 miners. At 7 p.m., the San Jose mine attempted a rescue, and they couldn't get close to the miners because it was such a huge collapse. Families from around the country heard about this and started to go towards the mine. On August 7th, the next day, they had a second collapse. This one blocked the ventilation shafts that could have been used as an escape route by some of the miners. The Chilean government had been monitoring what was happening at the mine. They heard about the second collapse, and the government engaged. And they ordered all of the rescue to be handled by a group called Codelco. And it was a country-owned mining authority, and they would coordinate all the rescue attempts. That way it put it under the authority of the government, which was probably for the best because the San Jose Mining Company didn't have the resources or the money to really put forth that same sort of effort. Now here's a photo of the 33 miners. Now at the point of the second collapse, nobody knew if they were all dead or all alive, or partially dead and partially alive. 33 men. That's a lot, folks. Well, the government dispatched 3 different drilling rigs to the mine, the most advanced drilling systems they knew of. 2 were owned by Canada and operated by Canadian companies, and 1 was a USA company operated by a USA company. On August 8th, they started to drill exploratory holes in an attempt to see if they could find any life in the mine. And these exploratory holes were just a drill head wide, if not smaller, as fast as you could go down 2,000 feet. Now, as they were planning to get together on where to drill, the owners of the mine came forward and said, well, we have to tell you that our maps aren't current. We're not exactly sure where that finger of that mine went in conjunction to the map, or exactly how deep it is. People, they were drilling blind. They didn't even know exactly where the men were at because the mine didn't keep good records of where they were drilling and what they were doing. That's unheard of. So how could they drill if they didn't know the exact locations? Well, these 3 different drill rigs drilled 30 different probe holes, hoping to hear something, and they put listening devices down. The 30th hole, they detected tapping. Bingo. At least 1 person's alive. Well, they decided to pull that listening device up and put a video device down, they thought. And as they pulled it up, there was a note attached. And the note said, all 33 of us are all right and sheltered. What? All 33 are alive. I know the mine didn't believe it, co-workers didn't believe it, family didn't believe it, but here they had it on a note. Unbelievable. Well, through that small borehole, the rescue crews established a video feed, and they quickly determined that all 33 were alive at 2,300 feet below the surface. Now, it had been 17 days with the miners having no contact with the outside world. The men had lived on a 2-day supply of food and water for 17 days. It was later found that they located some water in some small springs, and they took the water out of the radiators. It wasn't the best water, but it kept them alive. Some of the guys had developed fungal infections because it was so hot down at that depth, and it was 95% humidity. They were able to get the hole slightly larger, and on August 23rd, they were able to drop in a nutrient-based gel for the miners, and water and communication devices. The gel was the most nutrient-rich stuff that they could find to keep the people alive. Now, in the meantime, the Chilean government was doing some really smart things. They had people from all around the world volunteering services. And they had brought in some stellar experts. They brought in experts from NASA. They were experts in how to deal with people in isolation, in the dark, under high stress. They brought in mental health experts and psychiatrists. They brought in physicians for the medical side of it. And at this time, the area around the mine was now a small city of relatives and friends. And it was named Camp Hope. As the days went on, hard food was eventually able to go down to the miners, along with lights and reading material, as that hole got bigger. In fact, on August 27th, the miners gave a video tour of the cave they were in to their family and rescuers. That's interesting. But the family loved it. The rescuers wanted to see what the conditions were like and see what they needed. 3 days later, on August 30th, 2 rescue holes had been planned by the Canadian company and one by the USA group. These were holes to rescue the miners. These were different than boreholes. The first hole was started on September 5th, second one on September 19th, and a third one had already been started on August 30th. The rescuers had asked the trapped miners if they would split into 3 groups and work for 8 hours a day, cleaning the debris from the area they were in and reinforcing the walls that were around them that were saving them momentarily. This did 2 things. Kept the miners busy physically. They had the nutrition now. They had the water. Kept their mind engaged. It gave them something important to do. In the meantime, the expert drillers from around the world who were on the site had come to the decision, a cumulative opinion, that to drill an escape hole and later reinforce it, at the minimum, it would take 4 months, and the miners would be lucky if they got out by Christmas. Can you imagine hearing that news? Wow. September 14th. This lifted everyone's spirits. One of the miners' wives was giving birth to a baby girl, and they had it set up on a video feed so they could watch. And her husband said, "Yeah, we all need this. Let's watch life happen in front of us." Happy baby girl. October 9th, the first miracle happened. Well, if you consider them all alive in that hole, that's a miracle. The thing that was supposed to take 4 months, drilling through solid rock, one escape hole broke through on October 9th to an accessible area of the miners. Now, they had to still line this hole with metal piping to make it safe. Engineers had designed a very small escape hole to be used with a thin capsule that would drop down and allow one miner at a time to come out. This is what the capsule looked like. It was very, very thin, just enough that you would crunch yourself into it and you'd be pulled up. You know, after being in that mine for as long as you had been, who cares what that little escape tunnel looked like? On October 12th, the tube was lined and deemed safe to travel. The first miner that was put into the tube was Florencio Avalos. He was in the capsule for the 2,000-foot ride to the surface, where there were thousands waiting, including the president of Chile that stood there and met each miner as they came out, along with their family and friends. It was a huge event. Just after midnight, Florencio broke the surface. Later that same night, the last man, number 33 of the group, made it out. And it was the shift supervisor. He was the man who organized the groups to decide their rules and fate in a democratic fashion. The rescue cost $20 million, and the bulk of it was paid by the Chilean government. Now, that shift supervisor had organized all the men, and they all agreed to make decisions as a group by majority rule. Very organized, very civil. But what was the conduit that kept them all together? This is the part that is the important segment of the story in my mind. One of the miners was named Jose Enriquez. The guys knew that Jose's dad was a pastor and that Jose was a dedicated, committed Christian who had studied the Bible extensively. Hours after the 2 p.m. explosion, several men asked Jose to lead their group in prayer. Jose had the men sit in a circle and pray together. Jose said that the men refused to give up and knew God would answer their prayers. Ten days after that initial explosion that trapped them, the men, without any contact from the outside, heard a drill coming down. And they knew the drill missed them. Jose said that was the most depressing day to that point. He said a few men felt defeated. Others felt they were going to die. Jose said he immediately called for a prayer group. They all sat down. They all prayed together. Jose said that almost immediately the attitude in the air changed. People felt alive, felt optimism, and they felt God was listening. On the 17th day, there was a second borehole that should have missed the men because the maps were so far off. Engineers later said that as they were drilling, the drill hit a huge rock and deviated. That deviation is what caused the drill to meet the miners in their cave. Tell me that's not a miracle. Jose later said that it was God's divine hand that moved that drill head. Because if it hadn't moved it, there's a good chance they were never going to be found. Because nobody really knew where they were because they didn't have any maps. A man named Andres Sagare was placed by the government in charge of all rescue and drilling. He was a brilliant engineer. He knew how everything worked better than anybody. He was later interviewed after the rescue. This is what he said. He said, in the drilling process, things happened that held no logic within engineering. He said that the prayers that were generated produced the great energy that changed. That second borehole brought food, water, medicine. Jose said that the men decided on their own that they wanted him to lead a second prayer session, 2 every day, at noon and 6 p.m. Jose did it. And then eventually Jose asked for an outside pastor, one up on top, to lead their group in prayer during a video session. And it happened, and they did it. And Jose said it just reaffirmed what they all knew. God was listening. God was taking care of them. Don't worry, it's going to happen. After the men were rescued, several families were interviewed weeks later. And the wives stated that their husbands had changed. They were now talking to God regularly, thanking him for being alive. They're better people, more introspective. After the miners got out, they were all given a free trip to Disney World. Yeah. And Jose went on a speaking tour. And he regularly talks about motivation, God. So let's think about this. Miracle number 1, that they all survived that initial explosion. What else can you say? Miracle number 2, that drill head that hit that rock found them. Number 3, they all supported each other through prayer. They sat in a group and they all agreed that they needed this. What would have been the chance, the odds, that all 33 of these men would have survived? 17 days, essentially in the dark, enough to drive anybody crazy. One of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my life, friends. I'm not sure if you'd ever be the same after that. Imagine the nightmares the people must have. But I'd like to hear Jose's presentation. I bet he's a very, very insightful person. But for you, it's the holidays. Miracles really do happen every day. You just don't hear about them. The power of prayer. It's huge. I remember one night on Coast to Coast, George Norrie asked for everyone on his radio station to pray for someone. And they did. And the guy recovered. When I was having the premiere in Tacoma for American Sasquatch, I asked for 1 minute of silence for Harvey Pratt because he wasn't doing well. Do me one favor, pray for Harvey. He's my friend, my best friend, spiritual person, and a great soul. Pray for Harvey tonight. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great holiday season. And remember, kindness costs nothing, it's contagious, and people appreciate it. Be safe, be kind, Paulides out.